Hello everyone, back with another painting for you. So today we're going to have a Florida landscape. I'm just going to show you the steps and the process of how I go about it. So here's my drawing. The colors that I have on my palette is cad yellow medium, yellow ochre, alizarin crimson, cerulean blue, ultramarine blue, raw umber, and sap green. Actually, no, that's Hooker's green. I take it back. And white. Actually, I'm going to probably add some burnt umber to this too. Maybe. We'll see. Anyway, so we're going to start with the darks real quick. And for my darks, I'm going to start with ultramarine blue, alizarin crimson, and some raw umber. Just plop that on there. I'm trying to vary my my colors for my darks. There are other bushes, you know, different colors. It's not all one unified color. It makes for a good painting. And if I need this to be darker, I can make it darker. Not a problem. I'm using a number 4 flat. This is a Winsor & Newton University. They're pretty good brushes. They're good. I like to lay out my foundation sometimes. So now for the background, because I have this value, a stronger value, this is going to be a little bit of a distance. It's going to be more on a bluish side, and the value is going to be a little bit lighter than this dark area right here. So we're going to go with ultramarine blue, a little bit of raw sienna, maybe a little bit of yellow ochre, and white. Now, remember, I'm not looking for perfection. This is a small painting. I'm not looking for complete details. Just impressions of the landscape. Nope. Got a little bit of dirt. Okay. All right. So now let's work on the sky and fill the rest of this canvas. Not a canvas. This is actually a wood panel. This is birch wood, 6x8. All right, let's start with the clouds. Let's do some ultramarine, a little bit of raw umber. Let's test that color out. Maybe a little bit of alizarin crimson. A little bit lighter. It's probably good. This is basically the base of some of the cloud system. And I'm probably going to go over these eventually again. Most of the time I usually do. So let's go for a sky. Let's see how this color works out. Not bad. Let's maybe add a little bit of yellow ochre to that blue. Yeah, I could work with that. Be careful how much water you put on your brush and on your panel, because sometimes if it doesn't dry, it will leave you some white spots and it'll just like drag over. It's just like oil painting, the same thing. If you put too much medium, things are just going to float. Just filling in my negative spaces, because we're going to go back over that later. Just because I put this color down does not mean that's the final color. It may change as during the course of the painting. Just the way I do things. Sometimes things change. So now I'm going to throw in some ultramarine blue to this mixture that I have already over here to give the zenith of the sky, you know, it's a little bit darker blue. Give it a little bit of warmth, and to do that I'm going to add a little bit of yellow ochre, like a really small hint of it. So now I kind of define the shapes of these clouds, and I'm going to add other colors as well. I'm going to let this tack up just a little bit. Actually, no. I'm going to add the colors now. What I did was used the base of the cloud color. I'm adding it to my yellow ochre just to give it that transition color. Soften up the bases, the transition between the light areas and the dark. There you go. And eventually I'm going to go back and redo the clouds. Or not the cloud, but the sky. Okay, so now I'm just going to try and fill out the rest of this. So this is going to be like swampy area basically, with some sliver of water showing through, and then, you know, it's probably going to be a few birds in here somewhere. I don't know exactly where yet. And then we're going to start working on the midtones and then the highlights. So let's start working on this part. So it's like a swampy area. So I'm going to go with a little bit of yellow ochre and maybe a little bit of not alizarin crimson, cerulean blue, and a little bit of alizarin crimson. Let me test out this color. Yeah. Now, the color is not going to be unified. Some parts are going to be a little bit more red than the others, and pinks, and this may be a little bit darker. Just adding visual texture here, and you'll see in the end result what it gives. Now the sky had a little bit of time to dry, so I'm just going back over the sky. So a little bit of ultramarine blue, a little bit of cerulean, and some raw umber. There you go. So this time I put a little bit more ultramarine blue than cerulean. As you can see, this is a little bit more on the purplish blue side, which is good for me. Works great. And I could put these negative spaces in the clouds as I wish. Now I'm going to add a lot more cerulean blue to this mixture. Yeah, that turned out good. Don't forget your negative spaces at this point. Would be a good time to start putting them in. And what I mean by it's like these little sky holes, just to give definition to the landscape, the background trees. There you go. Now moving forward here, I'm going to give some definition to this background landscape here. So for that, I'm going to use a number 1 round brush. So I'm going to mix like a green to make the tops of these tree lines, I'm going to use yellow ochre because yellow ochre has got some red in it. So what that's going to do when I use a blue with it, it's going to tone down the green. It's going to make like a really grayed out green versus if I was to use let's say sap green and yellow, or ultramarine blue and yellow, or cerulean blue and yellow, like just two colors mixed together, and it'll give me a brighter chroma. But if I use ultramarine, if I use a yellow ochre, which has some red in it, and a blue, is going to give me a dull, as you can see here, it's going to give me a dull green, which is what I want. I don't want to give too much interest to this area. This is just background, background noise basically. Just say, hey, there's something back here. That's all. That's all I'm saying. Make it a little bit more. I'm adding a little bit more ultramarine blue than ochre now, just to do the base of this. There you go. All right, so now this little bit of brackish water back here, which I'm going to make ultramarine blue and raw umber. It's okay if some of the base color just shows up on you. That's fine. So back to my yellow ochre, maybe a little bit of hooker's green, a little bit of white. Let's work on the top of these tree lines here. Eventually the highlight's going to go over here. So if I want to highlight, what I'll be doing, what I'm going to do is use hooker's green with cad yellow medium together, add white, and you can see the chroma already is a little bit different. And what I mean by the chroma, I'm talking about the intensity of color. And I'm varying my greens by adding ultramarine blue and more ultramarine blue to these colors, as well as using some raw umber. Okay, you don't want to make the greens all the same. Vary those greens a little bit. And right now I'm just doing the edges because I'm going to probably add some more darks in a minute here. I'm going to make this area a little bit darker to give a little bit more definition. So ultramarine blue more likely, a little bit of raw umber. And the reason why I'm using ultramarine blue more on the bluish side is I'm going to push this tree line here, give it a little bit more distance. If it was like really up close, it'd probably be, you know, I'd keep it more in a brownish, dark brown color. But this is more in the distance. Let some of the red show through. It's okay. All right. Because there are other colors that are going to go in here too as well. We're going to put some hanging moss as well on some of these. Now remember, I'm not trying to keep this painting tight, meaning I'm not trying to make it, you know, so detailed, just visual interest here and there. I'm using the edge of my brush here, just like that, just give it some interest, some a visual interest. Some light hitting this part, some light hitting here. Move your brush around. Make some tree line here. Just move your brush around. Okay, we're gonna make a little bit of hanging moss. So for the hanging moss, what I'm gonna use is gonna be Hooker's green and alizarin crimson, which is gonna be like a give me a grayish color, and then just, you know, like, hold on, probably need more. Just floating my brush, barely, like just hitting the edges, and let maybe a little more white. Not everywhere, just some places. There you go. Now it's starting to have a little bit more depth. Let me take this one out. Take that out. There you go. Let's make some underbrush over here. Alizarin crimson, yellow ochre. The reason why I'm using this yellow ochre a lot, it's because it's very opaque of a color. So it really go. Now, like I was talking about, all right, now I'm going to do some of the highlights on here, and I'm going to do highlights on the trees back here as well. So let's start with the water. Let me work on the water a little bit more. Using really the edge of my brush here. and I'm lightly pressing on my brush here. Some areas are going to have more highlights than others. That's why it was important to start dark in a lot of areas, so I could have some of these lights show through. You're probably not going to see it very much on the camera, but I can see it. So now I'm moving this yellow up a little bit more. Just to show like the water is just not everything is on one single plane. So give this some depth here. Shows like the water goes back there a little bit. So we initially started out with one flat even plane, but by moving the water up a little bit like this, it just shows like the water goes back there a little bit. I'm breaking up that plane. So these are going to be like, as I come closer towards the front of the painting, I'm going to give this a little bit more grasses here, give them a little bit more use like all edges of my brush here, just edge of my brush, just give some definition. I'm going like in this Z pattern, so just to train your eye towards this way, and then this plane bring you back towards the tree line. I'm using the edge of my brush to make these grasses. Sorry if I'm stuttering a little bit. I'm trying to do like a few things at the same time, trying to concentrate on this thing at the same time, trying to explain. There you go. I'm gonna put some of these these dark areas here to show like water popping through some of these grasses, and that's gonna do. It's gonna serve as an area for me to, when I put the birds, show reflection of the birds and the tree line. So watch how it's gonna be done. So ultramarine blue, raw umber, maybe just a little bit of yellow, just to give it like a really dark green. So, and I'm using a watercolor brush. It holds a lot of water, and plus it's nice, I could get a really fine tip. Now as I come closer, I'm going to put more blue. And the reason the closer I am, I'll be able to see more of the sky color. So now I'm going to show some of the clouds inside that water. So this cloud is going to reflect on some of this water here. Actually, it needs to be lighter. Okay. Some of this stuff is really going to pop off this garish green that I have in here in some areas. All I did here was add ultramarine blue, a little bit of white, and some raw umber, just to define the space a little bit more. Let's add one going right here. Give its reflection. Let's add some here in the back. Probably add a bird back here. Now I know these birds are in a distance, but we're going to add their reflection. There's the one spreading its wing back here. Let's put one or two on the branch here. You know what, let's make some rosea spoonbills here. Let's put a couple spoonbill. Let's just make this one a spoonbill. There you go. This one's spreading its wings. Give it shadow. There you go. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments and I'll be more than happy to help you. So this is how you do a small, short painting, not making it too tight, not too much detail, just give impressions of details. And with that, I'll leave you guys and hopefully see you in the next painting. Bye-bye.